and some of them are so plausible they can actually blow your mind. Number 12. The Smurfs are
I thought we were past this years ago.
So if you put that into context, we've been watching Nazi Germany outdo the Brits with their superior intelligence all these years.
I prayed they would never make a comeback.
And Mr. Crocker's scheme to capture his fairy godparents is in reality just him making sexual advances on Timmy.
But it's with great displeasure that I have to inform you that cartoon theories have made a comeback. And this time, they're inescapable. Welcome back to Top 15 Dark Cartoon Theories That'll Ruin Your Childhood. Those faint of heart might want to look away. Number 1. Is Peter Griffin actually a representation for the Hollow? The best part of that is no exaggeration. There are some of these that are that insane. I couldn't come up with something more delusional if I tried. I used to be obsessed with these things, and I'm sure some of you were too. I would watch those Watch Mojo top 10 lists all the time and thought I was some kind of baby genius for not understanding the totally legit fact that Bikini Bottom is actually a nuclear testing site. And that's why all the fish can talk. There's nothing in the cartoon to imply that isn't the case, so it must be true. Although a lack of facts have never stopped him from rising in popularity before, I still see that dumb Fairly OddParents theory all the time. Poof is purple, which means he must be one Decimo's kid. Like, dude, I think you're forgetting one crucial aspect of that episode.
And that's why this theory is incorrect.
These theories go from being completely dense, but at least can remain as a fun headcanon for yourself that you know isn't real but appreciate the creativity anyway. Or they're just, is Dr. Eggman Donald Trump? Is Tails in love with Sonic? Am I legally allowed to drive a vehicle? And so join me, won't you, on this nice little trip down memory lane. To a simpler time when everything just seemed so much more believable because it was on the internet. When theories like Ed, Edd and Eddy being in purgatory, or Adventure Time taking place in a kid's coma, made you feel a bit more mature for liking children's media. My dad told me to stop watching SpongeBob, but little did he know all the characters are representations for the 7 deadly sins. That's the kind of storytelling you're just not gonna get out of Game of Thrones. Time to look up more cool cartoon theories using my stellar free-to-download Opera desktop browser. This video is sponsored by Opera. Opera has this amazing-to-use desktop that sets out to improve your productivity and make your life easier. Opera is like this great all-encompassing aid that offers you a free built-in VPN, ad blocker, and plenty more to improve your online experience. They've got Spotify, Apple Music, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, and way more integrated right into your browser, which is only made more intuitive with their tab islands, which allows you to keep your tabs arranged in separate groups, which I tell you has made working on a video like this where I have to keep track of all these clickbait articles so much simpler. With all that and a nifty AI feature that can help you translate text or find what you're searching for by providing you with links or search words, there's never been a better time to check out Opera. So use my link below to download Opera today. Again, that link is right below in the description and comments, and thanks to Opera for sponsoring the video. Okay, so, first of all, I blame you, TikTok, for this utter nonsense somehow reaching the mainstream again. In our current era of split-second attention spans, the youth of today don't have time to sit down and watch the top 10 of anything. Half of them can't even count that high. That brain power has instead gone towards memorizing the entirety of Skibidi Toilet. And so because of that, we've seen a massive spike in podcast clips where 2 people discuss various dark cartoon theories. And not even real podcast clips, like the one I do over on YouTube and Apple and Spotify that you should listen to right now, and also subscribe to the channel. But no, the new trend on TikTok and YouTube Shorts is to completely script a conversation between 2 people, where one tells the other their theory that they clearly just took off a BuzzFeed article, and act as if they're hearing it for the first time. It's so vapid and completely interchangeable. Timmy Turner is Danny Phantom. Really? No, of course not, you fucking idiot. Use your brain, you goddamn clown. I vividly remember a few years ago, I was sitting in my kitchen, minding my own business, when my sister's boyfriend at the time walked in and was like, "Here, you should make a video about how Candace from Phineas and Ferb is actually insane. I read somewhere that Phineas got hit in the face by a bully so hard that it killed him, and now she imagines them in the backyard building inventions. That would be well good, mate." And I had to sit there and listen to this with a straight face before saying, "Yeah, maybe someday." I guess that day has finally come. I don't know, these things just really fascinate me. It so obviously tries to appeal to the most impressionable and naive people out there, and so we have adults in this world who are desperately trying to capitalize on dumb people being dumb. And it works. They have to treat this theory so seriously when you know in their head they're aware of how stupid it is, like they didn't just pull it off Reddit.
Many kids and adults find cartoons captivating and fun. However, some schools of thought believe that popular cartoons and animations depict more than what's ordinarily seen on the screen.
Oh yeah, schools believe, of course they do. A pattern you'll pick up on as well is that most of these theories can be categorized into the same 4 or 5 different themes, and they're always the most broad shit imaginable. Dream theory is the absolute epitome of this. Like, you can take literally any show, movie, book, video game, anything on planet Earth and say, what if it was all a dream? And suddenly, everyone started running with it. And so I'm going to split these up into fun little topics and go through a plethora of these dark cartoon theories. And we're going to give them a rating from plausible to fucking stupid. Starting with, the characters actually represent something dark. Now, this topic is pretty self-explanatory, and that's because it can mean goddamn anything. You'll soon come to notice that a majority of these theories just rely on throwing around the same few buzzwords over and over. A lot of these are just glorified creepypastas, but they're the thinking man's creepypasta. One of the most famous examples of this would have to be with SpongeBob, who, by the way, unsurprisingly has by far the most crappy fan theories out there. You know, there are lesser known shows in the world where a dark theory would be appropriate, but you rarely see it because it's just not gonna get the clicks. Like, look at a show like Jimmy Two Shoes. It aired on Disney XD where I lived in the 2010s. Got a couple seasons, nobody really cared, and that's it. But that show sees the main character living in a place called Miseryville, run by the evil Lucius, with the main character trying to bring joy and optimism to the depressed town members. You could make a dark theory that this place is supposed to be hell, that Lucius is actually Lucifer, aka Satan, which you can then corroborate with the fact that the show was originally going to be for adults, with the premise being Jimmy is just a regular kid on Earth who gets hit by a car, accidentally sending him to hell. They never went with that and turned it into a kid's cartoon, but obviously remnants of that are still littered throughout the show. Therefore, that's a good damn theory if I do say so myself. Thank you, Mark, I appreciate it. But many of these theories completely forget, or most likely, ignore the fact that you can't just bring up a theory and have that be it. You gotta actually show some evidence that supports it. And I think that's gonna end up being the main factor that separates the plausible theories from the shit. Case in point, the main SpongeBob characters represent the deadly sins, ooh. This theory states that each of the 7 main SpongeBob characters, well, represent the 7 deadly sins. However, the funniest part about it all to me is that even the people who like to entertain this theory can't even agree on which character is tied to what sin. The links in the SpongeBob 7 Deadly Sins theory are unnervingly easy to make. Apparently not, because not even your article can avoid how confusing some of these comparisons are. So there's a few obvious ones, you know, Patrick is lazy, so he's sloth. Mr. Krabs likes money, so he's greed. Plankton is envy, since he wants the formula. And that's it. The rest are either interchangeable or fucking stupid. So get this, Gary, you know, the snail, represents gluttony, because he's only really seen eating. Now, is that because he's gluttonous, or because he's a pet who can't talk? Sandy and Squidward both alternate between pride and wrath. Both can be seen being pretentious at times, but also aggressive, so I guess whichever you think fits more is the real answer. And finally, SpongeBob is lust, because he shows a lot of love for his friends. Yeah. Although every time I see someone post this list, the characters are all different. For such a popular fan theory, there's really no consistent consensus. Like, look, this one doesn't even put SpongeBob anywhere here. Pearl instead represents lust, because she likes boys. Fellas, is it sinful to be attracted to the opposite gender? Yes. This one also replaces Gary with the equally unfitting Mrs. Puff for gluttony. I wonder why. Mrs. Puff is shown to adore food, from chocolate cake to pasta, and is fat. You're gonna notice too how these things stretch the truth to try and make it fit as much as possible, like shoving a square peg through a circle hole. Like, no, because in one random episode Mrs. Puff expresses that she wants to have some leftover pasta for dinner does not equate to her adoring food. The simple fact here is that when making a show, you gotta give each character their own personality trait. And usually, in an ensemble like this, you wanna make them all stand out from each other. So of course they're gonna all exhibit traits that can be easily skewed to correlate with these sins. And this isn't to say all cartoon theories are automatically dumb. Even if clearly not true, there is fun to be had in knowingly looking way too deep into this shit. Like the SpongeBob skin theory, which I know you've had in your recommendations before, I could not escape that thing. It draws attention to the frequency of gags in the early seasons of SpongeBob that feature a character being shown wearing skin of another fish, and how it seems to be a normal occurrence with nobody batting an eye. My only issue with it is that the theory is completely open for interpretation beyond that. Like on its own, that's not even a theory, you're just drawing attention to a pattern. It's like you realize this is a running theme in the show, and now you have to build your own purpose around it, like, oh, what if they're doing it to drive away demons or channel deities? Or what if all these characters are just humans wearing the skin of sea creatures? Like, that's when it starts to fall apart. Are all these skin jokes coincidence? Or pattern? Coincidence. But this is still a quality scripted and well thought out YouTube video. Same with a lot of those Alex Beal ones that get millions of views. Those are fun because you can tell it's just a guy having fun and trying to entertain these outlandish theories and seeing how well they apply. You know, it's usually not just, what if SpongeBob characters were buzzwords? Like, I about the one that claims all the SpongeBob characters represent different drugs. Because I'm 14 and I think drugs are spooky.
No, Pac-Man, drugs are bad!
SpongeBob is into mushrooms because imagination. Krabs and Mrs. Puff are on cocaine because they're irritable and paranoid. Squidward is a heroin addict because he's moody. And Patrick loves that motherfucking kush. But then they say Sandy is the only sober one, which is why she gets very annoyed when visited by SpongeBob and Patrick, as they are usually high. But aren't they like friends in the show? Okay, we'll take a break from SpongeBob after this one, but I gotta give it a mention because it's yet another one that's so reliant on you being intrigued by buzzword. How about the SpongeBob characters all represent mental illnesses? SpongeBob has ADHD. Sure, that was definitely never an intentional decision, but if someone wanted to identify with that, then that's cool. Patrick has an intellectual disability. Wow, you really tried to work around saying that word. Sandy has borderline personality disorder because of mood swings and impulsivity. Like, I don't know what cartoon they're watching. Screen Rant, you literally said last article Squidward was the one with mood swings. There's like 400 episodes of SpongeBob. Just because a character acts differently between two of them doesn't mean they have mood swings. Squidward is depressed. Mr. Krabs has OCD, and Pearl has body dysmorphia. I think we're gonna move on for now. I love that someone's job was genuinely to sit down and acknowledge a dumbass theory like this, credited to a user, Strawberry Ooh Girl. What do you tell your parents your job is? As we all know though, SpongeBob isn't the only cartoon prone to receiving these lame representation theories. Winnie the Pooh is a really popular one, which states all the characters in the 100 Acre Woods represent different mental disorders. What the Pooh has an eating disorder. Piglet has anxiety. Tigger has ADHD. Owl has narcissism. Rabbit has OCD. And Eeyore is depressed. I mean, just look at him. And Christopher Robin is the root of it all, suffering from schizophrenia and imagining all his talking animal friends. I have to say this one at least is more believable than the SpongeBob ones, but I think that's more so just a result of Winnie the Pooh being a baby show for babies, and so of course the character personalities are going to be more simple, and therefore can fit into these diagnoses more. Also, there's like a million mental illnesses out there, so I'm sure if you tried hard enough you could diagnose anybody with one. What mental illness do I have? Let me know in the comments below. But we still prefer to think that Christopher Robin had real talking animal friends he spent his time with, because that sounds a lot less crazy. We think? Thanks, Yahoo. Bing would never stoop this low. I was surprised to see just how many dark fan theories there are for the Fairly OddParents. But with a show so out of this world and magical, I guess it makes sense. Possibly the most famous theory out there is that Cosmo and Wanda aren't real. Dude, it's always drug or mental illness. If you want to make a good fan theory, just don't involve either of those and you're already a step above this crap in my book. I'm also just gonna avoid all the aspects of these theories that want to delve into Timmy being sexually abused because, well, like, why? Does it really need to be that dark? So, apparently, because Timmy is so abused and neglected by his parents, he has to take antidepressants, which are manifested as Cosmo and Wanda, with Green Guy representing Zoloft and Pink Lady being Prozac, with them both being prescribed to help with anxiety and depression. The most obvious hole in this theory is, what's the deal with the magic then? Well, don't worry, because they've thought of everything. According to them, all the magic beings represent their own kind of drug. Dude, mixing the mental health theories with the drug ones, they're really breaking new ground. Jorgen von Strangle is steroids and Wandissimo is Viagra. Like, what? The anti-fairies are hard drugs like heroin, and the pixies are placebos since they can perform magic. Like, what? Also, there are other kids with fairies who Timmy interacts with. Even episodes where humans interact with the magical creatures. Not gonna acknowledge that, of course. It really does seem like a case where these people just throw an idea out there based on a show's premise, and everyone runs with it without considering if it actually makes sense or not. Like, I get that most people making these theories are just having fun. That's cool. But there are people living among us who genuinely think this was the intention the creators had. My boyfriend told me about this, so I googled it and see this entire story. I kind of believe it now because I heard similar stuff about other shows in the past, just like Rugrats is Angelica being mentally ill. And those are different personalities and hallucinations inside her head, and the other babies don't really exist. There are other Fairly OddParents ones that I barely even want to entertain, but I feel like I must as I've begun seeing them everywhere, and there's one man to blame for that.
Hey Hart fans, Butch Hartman here.
So Butch Hartman, in an attempt to once again remind us that he made the Fairly OddParents, only him, for years and years has been entertaining each and every one of these theories, duetting TikToks and YouTube shorts where the person explains their point, as he just nods his head and scratches his chin. I don't think I've heard him say a single word in any of these.
If you see someone with a pupil in the show, they're a fairy.
What? I never noticed that.
Yeah, but this is where it gets really crazy. So if you look at Timmy's crush, Trixie, she actually has a best friend named Veronica. But if you look at Veronica's eyes, she has pupils. So the theory is that Veronica is actually Trixie's fairy in disguise.
This would be a decent little fan theory. Clearly not true, but who cares? It's a cool detail to point out. If it were true.
Every single kid and human does not have pupils. But every fairy, look at all of them. They all have pupils.
So, is the mayor a fairy too? Seems like the approach to making this theory work is to just act like this show has 4 characters. I like that this one claims,
but they also have pupils. That basically applies to all of the other fairies in the show.
While showing Jorgen, who doesn't have goddamn pupils.
Humans do not have an iris in their eyes. This is a quite unique characteristic of magical godparents. The only exception here is George Strangle.
Like, which is more likely here? Butch Hartman intended for you to pick up on this completely random, inconsequential fact about the character's pupils and only relate it to Veronica? Or Butch Hartman doesn't give a shit about consistency. It's so stupid. Dude, this theory makes so much sense when you think about it. If, you ignore all the ways in which it makes no sense. Also, she lives in her own house. We've seen that at least once. Got any explanation for this? Oh, what's that? You haven't seen the show since you were 7? Of course. The last one I see everywhere, and yet another that Butch continuously entertains, is that Timmy Turner is Danny Phantom. Apparently when Timmy was 13, he didn't want his fairies taken away. Even though the show states he loses them when he's 18, but he's planning ahead, I feel it. And so to keep his godparents, he wishes that he was Danny Phantom, with Wanda turning into Jazz and Cosmo turning into Frostbite. Who? Also, don't the parents of both protagonists look alike? No! Dude, like, what if Jimmy Neutron messed up on one of his experiments one day and turned everyone into SpongeBob? Dude, they both invent things, they both have idiot friends, Sheen wears a shirt, you know who else does? The only theory format I could understandably say is worse than these are the ones that just go with something so meaningless that you could literally apply to anything. And that is Coma Theory. Like the last, Coma Theory is pretty self-explanatory. You take a show or a movie and basically say, what if it was all a dream? There are 2 incredibly popular theories under this, and those are the Pokemon and Adventure Time ones. No, I have never seen the Pokemon anime, so I can't attest to how well this fits. The lore. I don't know what I stuttered. So listen to this and let me know what you think in the comments. You know, the comments. That thing right under the subscribe button. Apparently at a certain part of the early episodes of Pokemon, Ash got hit by lightning, which according to this is when Ash gets put into a coma, being hurried to the hospital. This sparked a major changing point in the series' pacing and tone, with it getting much more lighthearted. This is because his medication has taken effect and stabilized his dreams into being idyllic? I don't know. Which would mean that Ash's fantasy of becoming a Pokemon master isn't actually happening. The other popular theory that floats around is related to Adventure Time, with it stating that Finn was a lonely boy. He had a poor family life and his only friend was his beloved dog Jake. Once Jake died, Finn fell into a deep depression that resulted in a suicide attempt, where he ended up in a coma, living in a perpetual dream state, with these dreams being Adventure Time, the show. Like, what do I even have to say? They speak for themselves. Regular show. In a coma. Scheider. In a coma. You watching this? In a coma. Wake up. There is one single theory akin to the coma thing that I actually like, and it's because they go out of their way to build upon a plot point that the show actually establishes, and it comes from American Dad of all places. So in the season 6 episode Rapture's Delight, we see the events of the rapture unfold, with everyone getting sent up to heaven, only leaving behind those who are sinful. Like This Is the End starring Seth Rogen. Stan and Francine are two of these people left behind because of something they did early on in the episode, and thus we see a massive time skip of them being in the post-apocalyptic future, where they end up becoming involved in Jesus' war against the Antichrist. Stan sacrifices himself to save his wife, and because of that, he's sent up to heaven for putting others above him, where he's granted with his own personalized room in heaven, which manifests itself as his greatest desire. And so he walks in, and everything is the way it was. Finding a way to reset the status quo, but that's still a sweet ending. So this theory suggests that the events of this episode didn't actually reset. Instead, it claims that every episode after this is just happening in Stan's personalized heaven. And hey, it's not the most sound theory out there, especially since the ending to that episode has Claus the fish dead on the wall, but still I like this one. You can tell it was just a genuine fan making a fun observation. It works. And again, it's at least better than the coma theories we went over.
He was treated poorly by his family and only ever felt loved by his dog, who he would tell all his crazy fantasies to. When his dog
this is almost as depressing as the Candace has schizophrenia theory with Phineas and Ferb. Oh my god, I can't avoid it! Alright, fine. This takes us into our next topic, which I'm calling the imagination theory. Once again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this one out. And it is yet another that can seemingly be applied to theoretically anything. Noticing a pattern with these. Basically, aspect of a show, say it's a part of a character's imagination. Why? Schizophrenia or one of those other wacky things. Like the American Dad one, however, this isn't without the rare theory that I actually enjoy, such as the Courage the Cowardly Dog one. It's strange how such a terrifying kids cartoon can have such a quaint and wholesome theory around it. Once again, Courage isn't a series I'm too familiar with. I was more of a Nickelodeon kid than Cartoon Network, but people theorize that the more unsettling moments of the show, all this stuff, isn't actually happening. And no, not because Courage is actually a metaphor for, I don't know, Percocets, or because it's actually all within a drugged up state before being put down. Instead, it suggests that perhaps none of this is really happening, because we're seeing the show from Courage's point of view. He's just a little dog. So it's a fair assumption to make in saying that all this crazy stuff is just happening through the eyes of a tiny, anxious animal. A little boring and clearly isn't real, but if someone had this as their own headcanon, I couldn't blame them. The other imagination theories, though, are fucking dumb. So it's been about 5 years since I learned about it, but I finally succumbed to looking up this goddamn Phineas and Ferb theory. My search history has forever been tainted. The FBI agents are probably fucking laughing at me right now. Phineas and Ferb are simply a figment of Candace's imagination. After not being able to handle Phineas's tragic childhood death, and Ferb having a disability that restrains him from talking or moving much, Candace creates a world in her head where Phineas and Ferb play together and create incredible things. This is why her mom is never able to see these things. They also claim Dr. Doofenshmirtz is Candace's psychologist who's trying to get her back to reality. So it's just like every other one of these, huh? I hope people don't yet again take this as me being the fun police or anything. I'm aware most of these are just made for the joy of it. I just genuinely can't believe there's people who run with these things. Again, I have literally had someone in real life try to convince me this was true. Like, how do you exist? I guess maybe it harkens back to a time before the internet became so widespread, so involved in every facet of our lives. A time where you could hear a theory like one of these and not immediately go to the creator's Twitter only to see them say, lol, no. Maybe it reminds people of when they were kids. That feeling of having the wool being pulled over your head. That there's a deeper meaning to everything, and shows you your first signs that maybe the world isn't so clean and good. Like, I remember I used to be addicted to those crappy Illuminati confirmed videos. You know, the ones where they'd show the Starbucks mascot and be like, whoa, if you flip it upside down, it looks like a demon. And let me tell you, I've slept with one eye open ever since. There's just something unsettling about the idea of something being covered up right underneath your feet, being swept under the rug while you remain none the wiser. But at the same time, no, Tommy Pickles did not die due to stillbirth. According to this riveting tale, none of the babies in Rugrats actually exist. Instead, they're all figments of Angelica's imagination because of her parents' negligence. They could have just ended it there, but no, they knew they were writing gold. Chucky died with his mother. Tommy was a stillborn baby, which explains why his father, Stu, was always in the basement making toys for the son he never had. Finally, the DeVilles had an abortion, and so Angelica didn't know if it was going to be a boy or a girl, so she imagines both. I like how they're trying to act as if they're answering a question that never existed, like, oh, this explains why Stu is always inventing toys, and not because it's his job? Thankfully, one of the creators of the Rugrats was asked about this biting expose, with them saying, and I quote, "Fuck, you got it. That's what we intended the whole time. Finally, someone with a brain." No, of course not. They responded with the eloquently put, "No, it's not true. Thank you, Arlene, for your public service." Dude, I'm running out of creative names for these topics. It's impossible to make these things sound cool. So next, I'm going with the title, Location Theory. Exciting. This one is a little more broad than the others. This can mean it's a theory about where the show takes place, or a theory about the characters going to a certain location. Look, I'm just trying to make it easy by lumping them together. You'll thank me for this. There are two incredibly popular theories about the towns certain cartoons take place in, and those are with Ed, Edd n Eddy and SpongeBob. Yet again. The Ed, Edd n Eddy one claims that the show takes place in Purgatory, which would explain why the characters never leave the cul-de-sac, and why we don't ever see their parents. That's a neat idea if you don't think about it too hard. It's kinda cool to take this decision that was clearly done to reflect on the nostalgic endless summers of childhood and give it a darker meaning. However, the more you read, the more it kinda falls apart. So not only does this take place in Purgatory, but each character in the show is also from a different time period. For example, Rolf is from the 1900s, at some point during those years, with his family's farm animals trampling him over. Yeah, dude, get sent to Purgatory for that. Look where you're going. Eddie came from New York during the Great Depression, Ed's dad died in World War II, and Double D died in the 80s because of a chemistry lab explosion. They do this for all the characters, but the question I'm sure you're most intrigued to know the answer to is it real? So the SpongeBob one claims that the reason all the fish can walk and talk and sell burgers is because of a nuclear explosion that happened on the coincidentally named Bikini Atoll, where between 1946 and 1958, the US government actually detonated many nuclear bombs on the island, with some being underwater. Literally, the name is all that makes this one come off as plausible. And hey, it is a mighty fine coinky-dink, but then that's all it is. A coinky-dink. Like, I'm pretty sure we've seen many other locations in the SpongeBob universe where the sea creatures also talk. It isn't unique to Bikini Bottom. But again, it's another one that isn't trying too hard to be deep or serious or adult. So I enjoy it even though it's not true. This one I've seen mostly be used by environmentalist websites like, oh, you like SpongeBob? Then why are you killing him? So Pixar's Cars? I like to forget about it too. Well, how would you feel if I told you that it took place in a dystopian future where humanity is dead? You want a test of this theory? Me too. If you think about it, we have autonomous car technology coming in right now. It's getting to the point where you can sit back in the car and it drives itself. Imagine in the near future when the cars keep getting smarter and smarter, and after one day, they just go, why do we need human beings anymore? They're just slowing us down. It's just extra weight, let's get rid of them. But the car takes on the personality of the last person who drove it. Whoa, there you go. Oh, that's it? That's stupid. This might be the worst one yet. When in our history are we gonna start giving cars mouths with teeth? Yeah, that'll make school trips fun. What about the one that states Scooby-Doo is happening during the Great Depression, which explains that the series takes place during an economic collapse? And that's the reason why all these rich and successful people are trying to spook people in silly monster costumes. Had me in the first half, not gonna lie. Okay, location theory was a lot dumber than I thought. I apologize for that. So I guess to end this off, I want to just rapid fire a few general dark theories that I couldn't find a place for anywhere else. Starting with, the Smurfs are anti-Semitic. Okay, no, we're not doing that one. The Krabby Patties are made out of crab meat. This one would actually be a kind of fucked up and cool dark twist on the show. Too bad Steven Hillenburg said there's no meat at all in Krabby Patties. Unless he's in on it too. Steven is Sans. No, yes, really. SANS is actually an acronym for Steven After Not Surviving. Moving on, Dexter killed his parents in Dexter's lab. This one is just filled with plot holes. It says after one of his experiments killed his entire family, he made replicas of them all. And that's why he doesn't want them knowing about his lab, so they won't get injured again. Only issue is, this theory also states that he made replicas that are indestructible, so why would he need to worry about them getting hurt? You had me, then you lost me. You got too carried away. SpongeBob has PTSD from his time in World War II. Toy Story 3 is a metaphor for the I think that's enough. I could go on. I really could. But I feel like there's only so many ways I can say, this sucks. Overall, cartoon theories can be a fun little way to further explore your favorite shows. I have nothing against the people who make these theories, but I really think that clickbait articles and soulless social media channels have beaten them into the ground so much that nobody can really take any of them seriously anymore. And that's a shame because... Well, no, I guess it's not really a shame now, is it? What are you still doing here? I said wake up!